Let's pay a visit to Mark's True Crime Corner.
This is not a good neighborhood. I'm scared.
Now, here's your host, Mark Thompson.
Eli Stutzman is there on the screen now.
Yeah, exactly.
He is Amish, is he not? He was an Amish man.
Yes.
Okay.
So he's an Amish man.
That's why this whole thing takes place in Amish country.
It starts there, yes.
Right.
So he was born into an Amish community, but he never really connected with the Amish life.
Yeah, well, I mean, but one
Yes.
thing I will say, and this is something you will not hear many people say, because I think there's a sort of a deference that's offered to the Amish community and sort of a notion that, oh, it's a simple life and they're such simple people. And, you know, my gosh, why can't we get back to those values? What happens in a cloistered community like that, and cloistered to be a ding word, is that you have a lot of bad stuff going on, and it's perpetrated oftentimes by party elders or religious elders, etc. And then because the community is so closed, there is almost a protection mechanism built in. There's tons of sexual abuse and other
Yes.
awful things going on in the Amish community, and this patriarchal setup that they have that is then informed by a religiosity, it prevents outside investigators even from coming in and finding out the truth. There's some of that here, but there's even more in the way of a conspiracy, sort of, to cover things up.
Yeah, and exactly. And this took place, the first murder took place in 1977. So at that time, if you were Amish, it was somewhat implied that you were not harmful, right? That you didn't present a threat.
Thank you.
And so
yeah.
that might be slightly changed now, looking back, more than 40 years, and with reality shows featuring Amish people, that has changed. But yes, at the time, it was different. And so
who does he kill, this Eli Stutzman?
Oh my gosh.
He kills his wife.
Yeah, because when I was reading about the book, yes, he killed his wife in 1977 on July 12th. So he's born into an Amish family, and he doesn't like being Amish. He doesn't like work. He doesn't like having to do work. He doesn't like having to ride in a carriage.
Those churches.
Yes.
And,
but he eventually settles down with a woman named Ida. They have a child. His name is Daniel. They call him Danny. And then she's pregnant with a second child. And she mysteriously dies in a barn fire. And so he says to his neighbor, which I still don't quite understand, call the police. There must be some sort of system in and by which they can call the authorities. The authorities come and they decide that she died. And it says on her, on the coroner report, she died, her heart stopped. Not a heart attack, not anything, not a murder, that her heart stopped. And that was caused by this fire.
We have a picture of somebody else up there, Danny Stutzman.
Yeah, so this is their little boy,
their
Danny.
son, who was also then.
He was a baby then, yeah, and she was pregnant with a second baby. So Ida dies, and Eli decides that he doesn't want to be part of the Amish community anymore. So he does what you would do. He sells all his cattle. He sells his farm. And he goes into what they would call the English world. Now, what a lot of people didn't know was that he was gay. And so he was living a closeted life, sleeping with different men. And so when he went into the English world, this is 1977, he started to party and he started to find men that he could have relationships with. And he was putting out, what do you call them? I can't even think of them anymore. Like ads, classified ads, personal ads.
Yeah.
Trying to find men. And he went to different parts of the country. So he was in New Mexico, and he was in Wyoming, and he was in Ohio. He was traveling around the country and finding different men to have these relationships with. And again, he was taking drugs and he was partying. And Daniel was part of all of that. Now, He goes on to
Daniel
being the son.
Is the
He's
son.
sort of dragging him through this.
Exactly.
In fact, there were times where he would have Daniel at these parties,
Yeah, there is
kind of
Daniel,
running around
the two
this
of them.
poor little boy.
Right.
So Eli goes on to murder 3 other men. And this is happening in like 1985 and 1986. He shoots one man who is his roommate, who wants to go public with their relationship, who doesn't want to pay him anymore for living there. He shoots another man, I think because the guy had his car and he wanted it back. But he goes on to kill 3 different men throughout this time over the course of like 2 years. And then from what I remember, the final unfortunate, horrific murder is his son. And so his son is found by somebody driving by in a somewhat desolate area. His son is found by the side of a road in a ditch. And nobody knows who the little boy is. They call him Little Boy Blue because his son, this is actually a photo from the day that his son was killed.
Oh, my God.
And his son is found in what they're calling like a blue sleeper. I'm assuming some sort of pajamas. They were brand new.
Jeez, man.
And his son is found on the side of the road, but they can't identify the little boy for 2 years. And there's a national campaign to try to find and identify the boy and find his family. And so they call him the Little Boy Blue. They actually give him the name of Matthew. And then eventually a couple who had been caretakers for the boy for a short amount of time see a flyer. They send a photograph of Daniel to the authorities that have the body of this Little Boy Blue, and they identify him as Daniel or Danny Stutzman.
Well, it's also grim, I know, which is one of the reasons I'm not drawn to this kind of material normally. But I will tell you that it's when I hear that, they are able to identify a body, when I hear that they are able to connect some kind of horrible thing like this to a person who perpetrated it, then I feel like, okay, well then there's a virtue at the end of this. But it's interesting that the reason it took so long, and I guess everything was sort of viewed as inconclusive, even the death of his wife, okay? So this guy who you're seeing, the father, Eli, he was involved and connected to his wife, who it was really suspicious. She died in a barn fire. It's unclear why she ran back into a burning barn,
Yeah.
And then the coroner said she died of natural causes, meaning it was a natural heart attack in these flames, right?
Yeah, so Eli tells the authorities that she had a bad heart. And so without much investigation into the murder, the official cause of death is literally, it says heart stopped. It doesn't even say heart attack, it says heart stopped. But her family, Ida's family, is like, she did not have a bad heart. There is no way that happened. Now, it's interesting because when I was listening to this story, obviously he's a serial killer who did atrocious, awful things. So his wife is one murder among 5. So there wasn't a lot of elaboration in what happened. But from the book, there's a lot of cover up and a lot of things that are going on,
right.
to
I think
hide what actually happened.
To me, that's the intrigue of this story.
Yeah.
So, by the way, this did happen in the 70s. People are asking now, maybe we're just joining.
Yeah, so in 1977, he kills his wife. In 1985, 1986, he goes on to murder 3 other men plus then his son. Yes. He's eventually found. They eventually find him in Texas. He was using his name, but different middle names and different social security numbers and different birth dates. And it's interesting, when he was in Texas, he had called the authorities because someone had broken into his house and then someone had stolen his car, but he was calling in with different names. But the police found him. Now, they didn't have enough evidence to find him guilty for the death of Daniel, but they put him in jail for felony child endangerment.
Yeah, and he tried to claim that his child had a pre-existing lung issue. I mean, the guy is just
Guy's awful.
Right, but more to the last point about cover-up, death being ruled inconclusive, heart attack, natural causes. This seemed odd. And so when you actually look at the breadcrumb trail, you see it goes back to this coroner. I'm thinking, why is this coroner so quick to kind of rubber stamp a very generic cause of death when it seems as though there might be something underhanded going on? And then you see that trail of breadcrumbs linked to the sheriff, right?
Yes, yeah.
Now, the sheriff is a key figure because the sheriff, it would seem, was actively involved in covering this up. And the reason for that was what?
The sheriff was having a sexual relationship with Eli. So in 1977, Eli is in the Amish community. There's the sheriff, and the sheriff is closetedly homosexual. He's gay, and he's having these homosexual relationships, but he is not public with that. And so, in fact, because of this relationship with Eli, he has covered up the murder of Ida in the barn fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you
awful.
see why the evidence and why the trail was covered up.
These are the 5 victims that they can connect to Eli. He had tested positive for HIV, and he was telling men that he was having sexual relationships with that he was negative and that he had just been tested. So it's hard to even determine how many people were affected by this terrible, awful, horrific person.
Killed his roommate, killed his son, killed his wife, killed those guys you're talking about. Ultimately, what happens to him?
Eli Stutzman gets out of jail, and he's living...
Gets out of jail, everybody.
Yep.
Okay, that's it.
Out of jail or prison. He's living in Texas. He is still putting up classified ads for men. He's running a leather company or a small business where he's making leather goods. And then one day in 2007, he commits suicide. So he commits suicide, and they find him lying on his couch with the TV on in his apartment. And so he kills himself in 2007.
Yeah, pretty incredible. And as I say, I think it's a window into this Amish world where a lot of bad stuff goes down and it is covered up, and you don't need an outside sheriff to cover it up. It's covered up by the other members of what is a religious tribe, and it is and they close out. They really wall themselves out from outside investigation. Not unlike other religious tribes, the Catholic Church, many of these intense religious communities, they exist without oversight. And this is a brutal, brutal thing that happened. The book is The Amish Wife, Unraveling the Lies, Secrets, and Conspiracy That Let a Killer Go Free by Greg Olson. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.